after me. I'm a man. I'm 40.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Ben Kruse. This is another episode of Moving the Goalposts. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart. You can follow Ben on Twitter. What is your Twitter at?
At Ben Kruse 144, all lowercase.
Okay, at Ben Kruse 144. You can follow the Empty the Bet. You can follow the show at MTGP ETB on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. You can follow the Empty the Bench Network at ETB Network on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. You can follow all the Empty the Bench shows on youtube.com/ETB Network. You can follow all Empty the Bench podcasts on etbpodcast.com. And you can listen to this show, Moving the Goalposts, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like and subscribe. And, of course, we are presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. All right, so there's a lot to get to. A lot of it involving the Jets. Football season is fastly approaching. And there's a whole lot to get to with, both I'm a Jet fan, you're a Patriot fan, the whole AFC East. Right now, though, there's a lot of drama with Hassan Reddick and he just requested a trade. He's holding out for more money. He's kind of like the Brandon Aiyuk of the Jets. This is a little different, except the fact that I would say Brandon Aiyuk has much more justification to do what he's doing than Hassan Reddick does. I think that star players demanding trades happen all the time in the NFL and all over professional sports. This one's a little different because he just got here. He was just traded here. You'd think that some of this might be worked out a little bit. He's demanding, I think, like double the amount of money he's currently making. And my view on this is, look, it's similar to the Aiyuk situation in this sense. I think it's similar in the sense that they're both star players, very good at what they do at their respective positions. But neither team really needs them that much. The Jets don't need Hassan Reddick. They want Hassan Reddick. He's a good addition. But the Jets still have one of the best defenses in football without him. He's just an addition. That's all he is. He's not a quarterback. He's not like, the team is going to fall apart without him. Mm-hmm. So I don't think Hassan Reddick, very much like Aiyuk, has that much leverage in this case. It's just like the most Jets thing. This is like the most Jets thing. Like, just such a distraction. The Jets were always full of distractions. Throughout my whole life. I can point, I think that of all teams in professional sports, the Jets probably have the most distractions. And it's the worst when the Jets have distractions because the light is always shining bright on the Jets.
Yeah. Yeah, no, overall, you pretty much said a lot of the points there. This is a guy that had in the last 3 seasons 10 plus sacks, But you look at that Jets defense, and it's almost like for him, for that team, that it's a luxury to have than not. I mean, because that defense overall with the Jets, they kept you guys in a lot of games in the last couple of years. It just came down to the quarterback play. And now, of course, you got Aaron Rodgers back this upcoming season. You got Garrett Wilson, of course, another year at wide receiver. He's going to be a stud if he hasn't already. So, you obviously just don't want to have distractions, already at the start of the regular season. But if you're going to have distractions at all, now's the time to kind of get all that stuff out of the way, because when it comes down to the regular season, you don't want to have that stuff kind of back in your mind. So obviously, if it happens for the Jets, I think it's just more of an added bonus. I mean, Reddick is a fantastic player, but, a lot of these guys just at the end of the day want their money. And so if he wants to get his money, and I think personally, if I have to make a prediction, I think that he'll get something done, but I don't know if it's going to be at the specific terms that he wants. I think that they're going to have to kind of do
both sides will probably have to compromise.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to have to compromise a certain type of deal that might not make him specifically, happy. He's going to have to get the bag for it. So I think all in all, if he leaves, he leaves, right? Matthew Judon, which of course my Patriots, is a similar situation that just happened, that he had a trade yesterday, which you could talk about as well. It could be kind of a similar situation as that, where if the Jets just don't feel like he's going to, be around. I mean, as they say, the best availability is your availability, right? So, I mean, if he shows up, apparently I was on my other network show, and my buddy that I was talking with, he said that he has not been present in the Jets facility since the press conference that he got introduced with the team. I mean, yeah. That's pretty crazy to think. So, I don't know. I think all in all, he's probably going to stay, but I don't think it's going to come down to his terms.
Well, I agree with you. He's probably going to stay, but this is getting a bit more nerve-wracking. I mean, we're going to get into Aaron Rodgers in a little bit, but remember the the amount of just hysteria over Aaron Rodgers missing a few days of mini camp because he was in Egypt. I mean, that was just like the worst thing ever. And Hassan Reddick is just not showing up. Now, obviously, he's not the quarterback, but this is just crazy. Like at some point, it's like, how long ago was this press conference? 4 months? When did they get him?
4 or 5 months, yeah. I mean,
4 months ago. So 4 months, he's not showing up at the Jets facilities. We have less than a month until the season starts. I mean, this is like a weird new trend from professional athletes, where when they're unhappy, they end up hiding out somewhere. It's a weird new trend that we see from athletes. When they're unhappy, they go hide out.
And the thing is, too, Nick, to keep in mind is that these guys need to get their work in. I mean, he's essentially has not even participated a lot on the field. So not only he's making a distraction for himself, but he's making a massive distraction for the team, because they're banking on him. Especially if they gave him the specific type of hey, we're having you come in and making you just another piece to this overall team. Heck, I mean, if the Jets don't feel that way, ship him off. Make it kind of like a similar way with Matthew Judon, which, I mean, I'm not going to obviously go too in depth about that Matthew Judon trade, but they were able to get a third. I think where a lot of people were speculating that the Patriots maybe are going to have to give up the other teams are going to have to give up a 5th round pick, right? So because Matthew Judon was able to be on the field at least during these practices, the other team probably felt that it was still okay that they were going to get something back in return for them, right? Well, so even if a trade potentially happened, it's you just don't know, because he just hasn't been on the field as good as he is.
And by the way, whatever situation that, even if they were to trade him, whatever situation that he goes to, they're going to be inheriting whatever this mess is, which makes him so much less attractive to anybody who would want to actually get him, trade for him. And also, it's they have training camp for a reason. You can't just show up rusty. They obviously have training camp for a reason. You can't just not practice for a whole off season. I remember Le'Veon Bell did that one year. I think it was maybe 2015 or 2016, something somewhere between maybe 8 or 9 years ago or something, or 7 or 8 years ago, something like that. Mm-hmm. He didn't practice. He didn't show up at the Steelers facility all of training camp, and then he shows up he finally plays in a regular season game and he's stunk. Like the same type of thing would likely happen with Hassan Reddick. And to be fair, players have bad games all the time. Star players have bad games all the time. But if Hassan Reddick shows up to the Jets facility and just lays an egg and just has some type of stinker, everybody's going to be looking at that and saying, well, this is what happens when you don't show up during training camp. Even if that isn't necessarily the reason why, it's always going to look that way. Like the Giants boat thing. Remember, you know what I'm talking about? When all the Giants receivers were pictured on the boat and then they got killed by the Packers and everybody blamed the Giants receivers going on that boat.
Yeah, it was like the downfall.
That is not like going on a boat is not a huge deal. Like
going
on a boat might make you a bit seasick, but I don't know if that necessarily means anything when it comes to an actual game. It might not be a big deal, but it always will look that way. And this, I think, is exponentially worse because you can't really say being on a boat is going to make you play football badly. But you can say not playing football and not working out is going to make you like a worse player. Like that's just an obvious common sense thing. And that's what it's going to look like. And, anything the Jets do, there is a brighter light on the Jets, I think. The Jets are very nationally relevant. They're not nationally relevant. They haven't been nationally relevant in the same level as like the Cowboys, the Niners, the Eagles, teams that are good. But the Jets have throughout my life been very relevant outside of New York, comparatively speaking.
Yep.
And usually for the wrong reasons. I mean, just if you were to write a script, you couldn't like if you were like the Jets are like a team that you would write scripts about to create conflict. And some of the stories seem a little too absurd to make up. I mean, and the Jets, even when they were bad, were nationally relevant because of all the stupidity and the drama that's been going on. So this is just a very Jets thing. Actually, if anything, a lot of things could be worse. I don't know if you remember this. Remember 10 years ago, there was a big controversy with the Jets because Geno Smith apparently missed practice.
Okay.
And some other Jets players, I think, because they were at a movie theater.
I don't remember that.
I don't know if you remember that.
No.
I don't even think most people remember that. But they were apparently at a movie and got the times mixed up, and that was like a huge thing.
That's crazy.
It was one of the stupidest things I could have ever imagined. Another one I was talking about this with Nick Morganson in our Jet video. Obviously, the time that Geno Smith got punched out by IK Enum because he owed $600 for a plane ticket.
Oh God!
You remember that one?
Yes. And
actually, that year the Jets had one of the best seasons throughout in my life. Actually, they didn't make the playoffs, but they almost did. They went 10-6 that year, actually, and the reason was because Geno Smith didn't play. That was the reason. It was when Ryan.
What was that year again?
2015.
2015. Okay.
I remember vividly when it happened. Geno Smith got punched in the jaw, and we didn't know why it happened. It was all some sort of mystery. To me, what we do know, obviously, is that's not a good sign if your quarterback gets punched because a quarterback's supposed to be a leader in the locker room on some level. So obviously, that looks really bad. But actually, when I found out it was over a plane ticket, I was like, that's actually one of the more mature reasons to punch somebody in the face. I mean, I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying if somebody owes you money, that makes a lot more sense than if somebody just says something you don't like. Like, it's one of the more mature reasons to punch somebody in the face, is what I'm trying to say. So, so the Jets just right now are a huge distraction. Everything's a distraction. The only difference is that now, like what I'm talking about is from like almost a decade ago. Now the Jets are more nationally relevant than they were then. The Jets are almost as nationally relevant as the Cowboys, as the Niners. All the really big teams are like the Jets are like just on a relevance level are comparable to all of those teams, or the Bills. I forgot about the Bills and maybe even the Dolphins. The Jets are right up there. They're tied for the most primetime games, I think. I could be wrong. I think the Niners and the Cowboys. So the Jets will be a big topic, a bigger topic nationally than we normally were, which makes the distractions so much worse. Because when the team isn't good, the distractions can only be so bad. I mean, you go from a bad team, oh, now everybody sees we're a bad team, big deal. But now the Jets have expectations, which makes it so much worse. When you have expectations, you can't have these types of distractions.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's how I felt with the Pats for, I don't know how long, for the 2-decade dominant run. When there was stuff that was off the field, right, it just the pressure. And I think that just over time, as a fan, it got a little exhausting, but it's also like when you have the expectations given to your team already, anything that adds onto it, not saying that the teams that aren't expected to do much or the teams that are awful aren't supposed to have that overall coverage, but the media and stuff like that, when they essentially see these teams that are like on prime time and, you know, playing really, really good football during the season, like the Chiefs and the Bills and all those type of teams, they start to get a little bit more recognition, right? And then obviously, you know, you see the stuff that'll come off and be like, well, what's going on there, right? That's kind of similar, I think, in terms of what the Jets are going through right now, in which the Jets are going to have one of the best defenses this year. They have Aaron Rodgers coming back after 4 to 5 plays in of last year's season, going out and being done for the year. So the expectations, I think, for you guys, especially in a big market type of team, are through the roof. And I think all in all, I mean, if you guys, I mean, I haven't really seen your overall schedule, but I think if, you know, you guys stay healthy.
Week 1, we play the Niners.
Week 1, that's right, yeah.
Which is
that'll be a good test right out of the gate. But I do think, though, you can get the best out of Aaron Rodgers, you know, in that first game, right? Because he goes back to the Bay Area, and it's like a really good test for that Jets defense, especially against a Super Bowl contender, which the Niners have. So,
yeah, and no, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. Well, in the Patriots' 6 Super Bowl run,
yep,
they've had little distractions, I would say, or at least off-field distractions.
I mean, Deflategate, but
Deflategate or
yeah.
Spygate.
Yeah,
you know, certain things that involve like cheating and things like that on the field, but at least those are football distractions.
right.
And by the way, during Deflategate, you ended up winning the Super Bowl anyway.
Yeah,
it really wasn't like I don't think Deflategate affected the Patriots that much because it was right before the Super Bowl, and then the Patriots just won the Super Bowl. I would say it was an unneeded distraction, but if Deflategate had something to do with the Jets, it would happen in like early September, and that's on the front page headlines all year. I mean, the Patriots, Deflategate, it was like, okay, it was in late Jan. It was right after the AFC Championship game.
right.
And everybody knew that, like, it's not like it was a close game. The Colts had no shot against the Patriots anyway, and everybody kind of knew that.
Yeah.
And then they ended up winning the Super Bowl. It turned out not to affect them that much, although it did result in Brady getting suspended.
Right.
But
and then either he got suspended, they won the.
I was just going to say that then the year he ended up getting suspended, they ended up winning the Super Bowl. Right. So it turned out like the Jets really, the Patriots really overcome those obstacles, or Spygate is another thing. But at least those things are on the field. With the Jets and often the Mets too, I would say, it involves things that are just like a script writer came up with, it seems like.
It's like you can't make this shit up type of thing.
Right. Things that are just sheer nonsense. And they're happening they're happening during the season or before the season, even worse. I think the problem with the Jets, I mean, one thing I like about this year is that I went throughout my whole childhood seeing the Jets behind the 8 ball in the division because the Patriots are too good. Right. Even years, I mean, by the way, there have been many years when like the Patriots were clearly the top team in the AFC East, and then it was like the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Jets. When there are many years when all 3 of those teams stunk. Like they haven't, like the Dolphins and Bills are good now, but they haven't been. Now the whole thing is flipped. The whole thing is completely flipped. Because for so many years, the Jets, I knew, had basically no chance against the Patriots when they had Brady and Belichick. They had no chance. Now it's the opposite. Now New England has basically no chance against the rest of the division.
Right.
Like they're almost guaranteed to be in last place.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't know what the Vegas odds are. I haven't checked DraftKings. I would bet that they have the highest. If you could bet on it, you might not be able to. If you could bet on it, New England probably has the highest odds of being in last place. I would bet.
Well, people were saying this offseason that, like, because we were a 3rd pick in the draft this past year, we could be number 1 or 2 this upcoming draft. which essentially, well, now I'll be curious to see how the odds look after Matt Judon got traded. I mean, it obviously maybe impacts maybe like 2 to 3 games, right? Because Judon, I think, is that good of a game changer. But outside of that, I mean, it's a new head coach, right? That just took over from one of the greatest coaches ever, and he's never coached as a head coach besides this year. So you just don't know about that. The offensive line is an absolute train wreck. It might be the worst offensive line. I mean, it gives off offensive line of last year, but potentially worse. I mean, they're playing the Eagles right now, but they're enjoying practices this week. I just saw all the reporters this week saying that, the Eagles, obviously the Eagles have a very good front, and they were just absolutely just completely owning the offensive line of the Patriots.
You're talking about in the preseason game?
Yeah, well, the joint practices before that this week because
okay.
they were in Foxborough during that. And then you have obviously really young receivers too. I mean, so it's just obviously like a new era type specifically for the team. So it's kind of like I'm going to be pretty much, like a Jeff fan or like any other type of team that kind of feel what the Patriots and a lot of these type of teams. I mean, hopefully eventually the Chiefs will start to be kind of like we are eventually soon, but they're going to have Patrick Mahomes, right? When you be able to find that quarterback, right, that everything kind of else falls into place. And obviously we have to kind of figure it out with hopefully with Drake May, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, yeah, like I said, I haven't checked the odds. It was just like I would bet that's probably the case. Well, the thing is, the Patriots have no expectations, basically.
Yeah,
they have no expectations. They're like the opposite of the Jets. If they go 3-14, people might talk about how Gerard Mayo maybe isn't the guy or something like that. But even if that were to happen, he still probably wouldn't be fired. He has to have a somewhat decent season. Not even decent, like not a complete train wreck of a season in order to get fired. In order to not get fired, it's like it's not really that big of a deal. And the Patriots right now are not nationally relevant, which has not always been a big thing. Well, I mean, look, it's only for like. I don't think this is going to last that long. I mean, the Jets are the complete opposites, though. The Jets are an Aaron Rodgers. Here's how you know a quarterback's expectations are high. There's 2 types of expectations for quarterbacks. There's expectations for the quarterback individually and team expectations.
Right.
So somebody like Caleb Williams, for instance, I would say has individual expectations.
Oh, yeah.
Like he's expected to be good. But the Bears don't have to make the playoffs. It's not really the end of the world if they don't. They're in the same division as the Lions and the Packers. It's not a huge deal.
Yeah.
Somebody like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers. I wouldn't even say Mahomes has this so much because he's won so much. But I guess he sort of fits that category a little bit. Trevor Lawrence, maybe. Tua, if he stays healthy, potentially. All of these guys I mentioned, they have team expectations. Like the team expectations for quarterbacks are, the bar is set so much higher. And it's a million times worse because it's Aaron Rodgers. The media hates Aaron Rodgers. They love, or I would say they like to hate Aaron Rodgers. There was another biography. Ian O'Connor wrote what I would call what's been referred to as an unauthorized biography of Aaron Rodgers. Of course, he has to write this biography now. Right before the season, this whole thing has to come out.
Oh, my God.
By the way, it would, in my view, it would make a little bit more sense if he wrote it like after this season, because that would have so much more to wouldn't you think that, I mean, I don't know when it's going to be finished. Maybe it will be finished after this season. But what I'm saying, but I think that if you're going to include an actual biography about Aaron Rodgers, you would want this season to play out because that affects the story so much, which maybe he's doing. I'm not actually completely sure about that. Just another distraction. And Aaron Rodgers said he regrets the I've been immunized comment.
I saw that
about not getting vaccinated. I thought this whole Aaron Rodgers gets criticized for the dumbest reasons. I didn't care about that very much because he doesn't have to be honest. Like people are like he wasn't being honest with reporters, and it's like, excuse me, you don't have to be honest with reporters. Like there's nothing wrong with him being not truthful about an answer that he doesn't have to give to reporters. it's kind of a personal thing. He was honest with his team and with the league, and that's all he had to do. It's like you have a lot of gall as a reporter if you think you're entitled to an honest answer. Like you're not entitled to honest answers. Like reporters don't get honest answers. Like you don't have to get one. You ask them questions and they tell you what they tell you, and that's pretty much it. Like I just thought that whole thing beyond.
Yeah,
stupid.
sorry. I was just gonna say they sometimes ask too many questions, in which a lot of the people just tell you back of, all right, well, it might not be the answer that you want, so I'm just going to kind of give you an answer so you can kind of shut up. So,
right. But also, even when you talk about in-game questions, I mean, like his vaccination status was not reporters' business at all. As long as he was honest with his team and with the league, that's all he was required to do. But, there's probably it didn't have to be that big of a thing. Even if you talk about strictly football questions, they're not completely honest because they're not going to give away their whole game plan. They give sort of vague, sort of factual, but not truthful answers. Players do to reporters all the time because you're not going to give away your whole game plan.
no.
So I just thought this thing was stupid. Aaron Rodgers, no quarterback gets criticized for dumber reasons than Aaron Rodgers does. Aaron Rodgers is one of the few quarterbacks who gets criticized for only winning one Super Bowl. He's one of the few. The only other quarterback in my lifetime who's been criticized for only winning one Super Bowl was Peyton Manning.
Okay, that's good.
Which was before he won. I'm talking obviously before he won the second Super Bowl. And that was which I think people miss. Like, I think sports fans sometimes have short-term memory. It is pretty amazing to me how narratives about coaches and about athletes can change so drastically in short periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
Peyton Manning was called a choker, and to some extent he was, and to some extent Aaron Rodgers is too. Like they weren't the best postseason quarterbacks in some sense. But you know what? A lot of the all-time greats have only won one Super Bowl, especially in this era. It's especially harder.
DiMartino, he hasn't won. He won
Dan
one.
Marino didn't win one Super Bowl.
Yeah, so exactly. So, you look at him. I mean, John Elway, he probably hasn't won much, I don't think.
He won two Super Bowls, John.
Yeah,
he didn't win two Super Bowls. John Elway won two Super Bowls, but he didn't win it till he was old, late in his career.
Yeah. So also, for some people that have won two, it's the timing of it, right? Guys like Mahomes. I mean, he's obviously won three already, and he's pretty much. I mean, he's in his prime, but he's just getting into his prime, at least personally. Obviously Brady won 6, and most of them were throughout his overall career. And Rodgers, I think, to me,
Brady won 7.
7, well, 6 obviously with my team.
6 was New England. That's the only one you care about.
Yeah, no, I was really happy when he won his 7th because then he was able to kind of prove to the people that he could win without the organization. I think that kind of gets the Belichick and Brady debates though, in which we don't have to talk about now. But obviously that stuff.
Well, the debate is over.
Yeah.
For a while, it was the Brady Belichick debate was like the Larry David versus Jerry Seinfeld debate. Who made Seinfeld? Was it Larry David or Jerry Seinfeld?
Yeah.
But that debate is still out there.
Yeah.
But this is just it's just over.
Right.
It's been proven wrong.
Yeah. But in terms of the biography, really quick, going back to that, I think personally they should wait until the end of the season. I mean, I don't really care personally because I'm not a Jet fan, but I do think for the Jets specifically, the biggest thing is they just kind of have to figure out to have a really good season this year. I think that their ceiling is playoffs at this point in time. I mean, I don't see other scenario which it's not a ceiling of a playoff team. I think to me, Nick, I see them at least max of 9 to 10 wins. I mean, if I have to take a look, I don't know in terms of your whole entire schedule, but obviously, the scheduling, I look at the Bills, right? The Bills, obviously, they just lost Matt Milano today. He's going to be out indefinitely. That's a massive loss defensively for them. They also are without Stephon Diggs offensively. I mean, Josh Allen obviously is a great overall quarterback, but we've seen when it comes to time and time again with Josh Allen, does it work in the playoffs? And the Jets have done a really good job against Josh Allen when they face each other because the Jets defense, for some odd reason, knows how to scheme up Josh Allen. Most of the times than not, I'd say. So, and then you look at the Dolphins. I mean, Tua, we've kind of seen with Tua, right? Tua he's a good quarterback, But when he plays in the elements, it gets to December. That's when he starts to kind of slide a little bit, right? He obviously, I mean,
Right.
obviously the Kansas City one, that's obviously taking it to the rails. But like we've seen like the last couple of years with Tua, the Dolphins always seem to have this overall story where they start great in the first couple months, and then they start to slide down. I don't know if it's just me, but that's just over my feeling. So you look at the overall team, and obviously the Patriots are going to be pick 1 or pick 2. So obviously, I don't think you guys have to worry about us for like the first or second time in years. Yeah, but I mean, look at the division. It's like you guys have a great chance. I mean, I if I had to pick a team right now, I mean, it's tough. I mean, I'd probably go
I'm looking
Dolphins.
at the futures right now. I'm looking at the division winner for the AFC East on DraftKings. The Jets
Dolphins.
and Bills are tied for
Ooh,
the
okay.
at plus 180. The Dolphins are a little behind plus 200, and New England is plus 2,500.
Uh,
So the Jets and Bills are tied, and the Dolphins are a little bit behind, which
okay.
makes sense to me because,
Yeah.
like, the thing is that the AFC East is such a strong division. I mean, it's not like we're in the same division as the Chiefs, who are far and away favorites in their division.
Yeah.
But there's 3 different teams that are expected to make the playoffs. But the thing is, all 3 of these teams have somewhat of a shot. And all 3 of these teams have their flaws. I mean, if you look at the Bills, they lost a whole lot of their players
Mm-hmm.
in the offseason. And even with those players, like their season is always a roller coaster. I mean, they almost didn't even make the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
The Dolphins have a great offense.
Mhm.
Problem is, Tua gets hurt all the time.
Yeah.
Last year, he played a full season, but that usually doesn't happen.
Mhm.
And their defense is not good, and they stink in cold weather. They
Yeah.
can't play in cold weather, and they're in a cold weather stadium. So there's a whole lot of problems. And with the Jets, it's obviously, well, Aaron Rodgers hasn't played a whole year, which could be an issue too. And he's a bit older, and we don't really know what we're going to get. Not to mention all of these distractions, like we've mentioned.
Yeah.
So it is true. Like if you really shine a bright light on the Jets' problems, it's easy to say this is going to be a disaster. But you can do the same thing with the Bills, and you can do the same thing with the Dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
And even if the Jets don't win the division, they're still probably a playoff team.
Yeah.
You can, like, if the Jets go 10-7 and finish in second place, like, yeah, that's a playoff team.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not getting home field.
And the thing is too, Nick, say for some odd reason, I mean, obviously I don't want to rush injuries on anybody, but say, Aaron Rodgers does go down this year, right? I mean, I do think the Jets offensive line is also positioned for that to not let happen this year too. So I just don't know in terms of, I hope it doesn't happen, knock on wood. I really just don't, because I do like Aaron Rodgers a lot. And I do think he's the right fit for you guys at quarterback. But Tyrod Taylor is your backup this year. You look at last year, right, with Zach Wilson. It's like once Zach Wilson was going to be your full-time guy, I mean, you kind of seen the overall.
That was embarrassing.
Wilson. And it's like, because your defense was able to kind of keep ground for most of the season. And if you were pretty much able to get decent, I mean, I don't even say like decent, like competent quarterback play. It's kind of like my Patriots, like with Mac Jones for the last couple of years, like, because our defense, for the most part, is able to kind of keep us in games for a lot of this, but the quarterback play at the end just wasn't enough, right? So I think with you guys, Tyrod Taylor kind of showed some flashes with the Giants last year that he was even better than Daniel Jones at times. He was able to move the football a bit more.
Daniel Jones was horrible last year.
Right. But you kind of know what I'm saying is like
Daniel Jones was worse than Zach Wilson last year.
Yeah. But I do think like with Tyrod Taylor is like he's been a veteran quarterback around the league, right? And it's like you have that kind of insurance, and I feel like specifically he can kind of keep you in game compared to kind of what Zach Wilson was. Is just like, oh, he just had no chance. So I think that's a different reason too.
And by the way, having a good backup quarterback is very underrated, especially now, because on average, there's been like last year on average, I think 2 teams, even a little bit more, each team on average has used 2 quarterbacks. I think there was like 66 different starting quarterbacks last year.
Yeah.
That's more than 2, a little bit more than, or about 2 for like on average for each team. So you need to have a good backup quarterback, especially when you're in a division like the Jets are in. And by the way, that was just embarrassing that we didn't have one. I mean, we knew how bad Zach Wilson was.
Yeah.
He's not even a good, like, he's a third string.
He's third stringer now for the worst quarterback room probably in the league this year. So that
and you know what? It's like Aaron Rodgers getting injured. I mean, the way that it happened, like I said, and I was at that game. The way that it happened, you would not like a script writer would have come up with that. It seemed like just that thing, like it is something that you would make up.
Yeah.
Like it is like a storyline written by writers. But I will say, a 40-year-old quarterback getting injured on turf. Apparently, turf.
That's turf too. I
don't know if it's true or not, but allegedly, it's apparently can cause injuries.
It's a cursed.
It is not the most unfathomable thing in the world that Aaron Rodgers would get injured at some point.
Yeah.
Not the way that it happened.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think. But Aaron Rodgers getting injured at some point, yeah, that sounds kind of normal. He's been injured when he was younger before too. He's had a fair amount of injuries throughout his career. That's not the most unfathomable thing. And by the way, the likelihood of him playing all 17 games this year, I think, is very, very low. And those couple of games, depending on who you're playing, it could make a very big impact. I mean, sure, if the Jets were to play the Chiefs with Tyrod Taylor, chances are they're not going to beat the Chiefs. But you have a little bit of a shot if you have a good backup quarterback. But you could play a team who is sort of average. I'm not exactly sure all the teams on the schedule, but I'm sure there's one I could point out where if Aaron Rodgers is out for that game, where if you have a solid backup, you can actually win that game. And given how tight that division is, I mean, it's a lot. There's a very good chance that who wins the division comes down completely to tiebreakers. It could come down to that. So that one game could mean the whole season.
I'm looking at a couple teams I'm looking at the Jets schedule right now. Two teams I look at right here: Denver, Minnesota. Two teams specifically that have quarterback situations going on. I mean, Denver has Bo Nix, Jared Stidham, and Zach Wilson. I mean, that's arguably the worst quarterback room, I think, in the league. Then Minnesota, unfortunately, with J.J. McCarthy, he's going to be out for the year. And then Sam Darnold. It's like the Jets, if somehow Aaron Rodgers went down, the Jets defense should be able to keep within reach against those type of teams, you know?
Yeah, I mean, even those teams, I mean, Darnold, are 2X Jets.
Yeah.
Darnold and Wilson. I hope they don't have any ghosts in Minnesota. No, those two, I think I'm not too worried about, I would say, those two particular teams. So I do want to talk a little bit about this Brandon Aiyuk story.
Yep.
We touched on it a little bit. So apparently it looks like he might end up staying with the Niners. Your Patriots were potentially going to get him, and they didn't. The thing with this trade is that they're trying to in order to make this trade go through, you have to satisfy the Niners and Brandon Aiyuk. So you have to satisfy two parties. Not only it just wouldn't have been worth it for the Patriots because they're a rebuilding team. What is the point of getting this shiny, what's the point of getting a really nice car when you don't have a house? That's what it would be like. It's like that meme when they show the tiny house with the really nice car. That's what it would look like if Brandon Aiyuk was on the Patriots. It would have been ridiculous. He's great. He's a great wide receiver. One of the best in the league, but it's a great wide receiver is not going to help the Patriots right now while they're rebuilding. Not to mention Brandon Aiyuk probably didn't want to go there either.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is what obviously we're talking about now. Brandon Aiyuk. So according to I'm seeing it right here, the Patriots offered him about $32 million a year. Obviously, in terms of that specifically with the compensation, that was always going to make him one of the highest guaranteed players in the league. I don't know specifically as much as I wanted Brandon Aiyuk if he is worth that. I think really that he's a very skilled, probably the best route runner on the Niners. But you kind of look at a lot of these stacked teams, Nick, with a lot of these receivers, and then you kind of bring that over on receivers somewhere else. You just don't know if they're going to have the same type of same skill set maybe somewhere else. You kind of show your true colors in a way almost. But I do think that if he goes into the right overall system, and I think with the Patriots overall, I think that with him it would have been fun because then maybe you can kind of start to get some other guys, some other pieces around Drake May and some other guys to kind of help him out. But I just don't think that he's in the right state at this point in time. And you look at the team he's just on right now in San Francisco. Does he want to go from a perfect situation where he is a Super Bowl contention down to a team that it's like projected 1 or 2 in the overall draft for the NFL? Probably not.
Well, the thing is that I think whether or not he's worth that money depends on the team that he's on.
Yes.
Like a quarterback being worth a lot of money, if he's a franchise quarterback, is universal. Like he's worth that money. Wide receivers, it's different for the obvious reason that they're dependent on their quarterback on another position for success because somebody's got to get them the ball. So with wide receivers, it's obviously a little different. When you look at like what the best wide receivers in the world right now, and Brandon Aiyuk's one of them, one of the best wide receivers in the league, what can he really do for New England right now? Not much. I mean, even with Brandon Aiyuk, there's still a last place team.
Yeah.
There's only so much Brandon Aiyuk can do. And wide receivers are not like always that impactful. I mean, the Chiefs won 2 Super Bowls after losing Tyreek Hill, after letting Tyreek Hill go. And he's one of the 5 best in the league. And I don't necessarily blame Brandon Aiyuk for looking to get paid like other top wide receivers. I get that. But it's not necessarily worth it for the Niners because the roster is so stacked. And they can't – what you have to remember is you can't pay everybody. It's a salary cap league. They only have so much money to go around. And like Brandon Aiyuk thing, like I'm under the because apparently now, look, I don't know exactly, but it looks like he's more likely to stay with the Niners, and it looks like he wants to. He just wants to get paid more.
Mm-hmm.
But when he was looking at the Patriots situation, he didn't want to go there.
Yeah, the quarterback situation, I get that.
The quarterback, like the situation right now in New England is bad. He doesn't want to be on a last place team.
Yeah,
the Steelers situation is iffy, and you know what? That situation, frankly, isn't that good either. I mean, your quarterback is an old Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. I mean, your situation is not that good, and you're in the same division with the Ravens and the Bengals. And by the way, the Browns, if things go well for them, I mean, they're probably gonna be like the Steelers are most likely also a last place team.
Yeah. Not
to mention the fact that he's in the Bay Area. He went to school at Arizona State. I don't know where he grew up, but he's not going to get like better weather than that part of the country, than California, in such a great situation. I think he might like it's sort of like the grass is greener on the other side type of thing. He looked at those other situations, was like, I want no part of that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I just think it's really interesting how like he had those like couple teams as like interest at first. Maybe he was kind of doing like due diligence in a way of like, all right, I'll maybe kind of test the market. It's almost kind of like in baseball. You kind of like test the market and see some of these teams and see specifically if it's the right overall fit. And obviously with the Patriots, it was the quarterback room. And I think with the Steelers, it was just like, well, you're in a really tough division. So now you go to option 3, and that's probably going back to where you are. You could stay in the West Coast. It's a lot warmer of the weather, and you could be on a team that has another chance of going to win the Super Bowl. The only thing we'll have to come down to is it's like the Hassan Reddick thing. Can you kind of work out a situation with money where it might not be specifically what you want? So go out and play well, and then maybe you can go get paid this offseason.
Yeah, well, he'll get paid, but I think he'd likely be willing to take a little less money if it means he can stay with the Niners, which, like I said, is just in so many different ways a very good situation. Going like just something as simple as going from living in California to Pennsylvania or New England, or he went to, he's been on the West Coast. He went since he was in college. He went to college at Arizona State. Like that's kind of what he's used to. I would say he's used to like West Coast mild type of weather. I do another story which we touched on before too was Matthew Judon finally was traded to the Falcons. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this.
Yep. So I was actually last night. It was actually I was at a tryout for something. As for it's more minor league hockey potential gig that I have, which I did a couple years ago, and I legitimately was just waiting for like my tryout to start, and just got a notification. It said breaking on it. And it said breaking in Matthew Judon. And I thought maybe it was going to be an extension or it was going to be something where maybe he got hurt for some odd reason or something happened. No, it was a Matthew Judon traded to Atlanta. And at first I'm like, man, it's a little shocking, but it's also not at the same time because there was this whole entire offseason that Matthew Judon, kind of showed to the team that he wanted to get paid. I mean, look at pretty much the other Patriots free agents. Devon Godchuk, he obviously kind of wanted a new contract. He got that for 2 years. Kendrick Bourne got a contract extension early on this offseason. And Ramondre Stevenson, the running back, he got a 3-4 year contract extension. And then Matthew Judon's kind of waiting, just like, well, listen, like, I was maybe one of the most important guys after Brady left. And, I'm kind of sitting here and I'm waiting for something. And, if my contract isn't going to get readjusted and make something work out, then I'm going to leave. That was pretty much what happened. And so he decided that, he wanted to go to a different situation. And as much as I love Judon, I can't blame him. And I think specifically, a lot of Patriot fans are like, why in the hell would they trade Matthew Judon? And then I'm thinking to myself, kind of going like, it's tough, but listen, he's kind of moving on from a certain situation where it's not good. I'll be frankly honest. He can go to a team in Atlanta, which I think is a lot of great young pieces. And then the return is probably a lot better than I think a lot of people thought too. And that's a third-round pick, a 2025 third-round pick. And I think you could definitely get something out of a third-round pick. I mean, we've seen with a lot of teams that you can get a third-round pick and get something really impactful. So I think all in all, it's a win-win. I mean, is it tough for him to leave? Of course it's tough for him to leave the team, but I also think that he gets to go somewhere else. The Patriots have a ton of cap space coming up, $100 million, I think, this upcoming offseason. I don't know if they're going to use any of it, and plus, I don't know if anybody's going to be enticing enough to go to the certain situation right now. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it, and I do think for a lot of the teams in division, it's a big thing because I think Judon was a game changer all in all. But I do think that he wanted to go somewhere else because he looked at the situation, and he just never got paid after waiting for months.
Yeah, obviously that's what happened. And it would have been worth it for New England because just like the Brandon Aiyuk thing, it would have been the nice car when you have a shack, when you're living in a shack. That's what it would have been like for New England if they had paid him because ultimately they're rebuilding. And by the way, New England is a last place team with or without Matthew Judon. They just are.
Only like maybe a couple more wins.
I'd be surprised if it has much like linebackers as individuals don't have that much of an impact. I would say. I mean, they could affect. I mean, if a linebacker is out, it might not even affect the spread of the game that much, if at all. It might not affect it at all. Like linebackers are just as individuals, like wide receivers, like are just not that impactful. And for the Patriots right now, what would be the point in paying them all that money? When you're rebuilding, you have no chance anyway. Atlanta is different because Atlanta is they're a fairly decent team in a weak division. So every little thing counts for Atlanta. Their situation is different. The Patriots, they're completely behind the 8 ball. It would be completely pointless.
Yeah.
So there's a few more. JJ McCarthy, he got injured. He tore his meniscus. He was supposed to be a backup anyway. I don't think this is that big of a deal. Last week, Sam Darnold was named the starter.
Yeah.
Which I guess puts a smile on my face a little bit. Sam Darnold, one of our exes.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough though. I mean, because I do think that, McCarthy, say, Sam Darnold, first couple of weeks, something didn't work out specifically. I mean, JJ McCarthy, he's a young kid, and you never know with a lot of these type of young kids. He maybe was going to potentially show something this year, possibly. I'm not sure if he was, but he's also on a team in the Vikings, which I feel like it's kind of like with the Jets. Is like every single thing happens to them. I feel like they're cursed. And then Jordan Addison, funny enough, well, Obviously not for their situation, but like it's crazy how the timing worked where he went down the next day or two after. I'm just like, it's crazy with like some of these teams, just like you're looking and just like, oh my God, it's like
Yeah.
one thing over the other. It's like a domino effect. And so
Yeah.
as much as it like for him, like he wasn't going to play, something maybe happened to Darnold where he wasn't right or he got down, maybe he had this insurance. Now for the Vikings, it's like we talk about, back as being underrated. Maybe McCarthy could have missed something, if depending on what could have happened. So it just sucks. And, for anybody, especially for a guy that just got drafted and was like ready to go ball out, even if he doesn't going to play a lot, to have this happen.
Right. I mean, I don't think JJ McCarthy is that good, honestly. He was good in
No,
college.
I don't think so.
But he was in a good situation. It wasn't like he wasn't like one of the star quarterbacks.
Exactly.
And even when they won, he didn't really have great games. He was just in a really good situation. So I don't really think he's that good of a player. And by the way, he can't be that good if Sam Darnold is starting over him.
That's true.
Sam Darnold does not normally start since he was on the Jets at least. He doesn't normally like go into any season starting. So he can't be that good. I do want to talk a little. There's some ESPN news. Around the Horn apparently got canceled. And there were also a bunch of firings at ESPN.
Yeah, Sam Ponder, who was doing Sunday football countdown in the mornings on ESPN, she got let go, which was really tough. And then RG3, who was also, I think, on Monday Night Countdown, I'm pretty sure, on ESPN or one of the football shows. I think it was that, but they both got let go. And Nick, this is not just the ending of this either. I mean, remember, obviously, they let go of a ton of people a couple months ago. So obviously, there's still kind of the remainders of some of these people where it's like, it sucks. I mean, I'm trying to remember Sage Steele from SportsCenter. She was one, I think, I'm pretty sure, that got let go like in the early firings a couple months ago. And I thought she was a really good anchor for ESPN all along. And then, so it's brutal. I mean, but we also have to take a look at it too. It's like business is very cold at times, right? And even if like you feel like,
but it seems to happen at ESPN a lot.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's just like I'm not saying it's like are they just targeting a certain audience per se, but it's like it's almost like they're trying to kind of start with like some new people, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's not a good thing.
But the thing is, RG3 is pretty new.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying.
He's basically as new as they get. Sam Ponder's been there for a while.
She has. Yeah.
That might be a little different.
Who was it? It was she was on a Monday Night Countdown. I'm trying to remember the name, but she got let go early on this year too from ESPN. She was really well known too. Legitimately, the name is like coming to me, but I forgot it. If you can get it to it, let me know. But yeah, I mean, just a lot of people are getting let go from ESPN, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, RG3 will probably keep broadcasting. And by the way, he's probably getting paid for the remainder of his contract. So it's not the worst thing in the world. And he'll probably go to Fox Sports, which is where all the ex-ESPN employees seem to go. He'll probably go there. So I want to talk about the Mets a little bit.
Yep.
You're a Red Sox fan. I'm a Met fan.
At least we don't like the Yankees, so have that.
Yeah, I guess we have. I guess the Mets and Red Sox are sort of allies in that weird way. I guess.
Yeah.
Both sort of anti-Yankee.
Mm-hmm.
So the Mets, here's what I'll say about the Mets: will we make the playoffs or not? Here's the thing. Thank God we're not in the AL, because if we were in the AL, the Mets would have no chance of making the playoffs. And look, I hope the Mets make the playoffs. I still think the Mets can make the playoffs.
Right.
They still have a legitimate shot. And right now, in the wild card, the Mets are behind the Braves. 2 games. They're 2 games behind the Braves.
Mm-hmm.
The good news is, I guess for both teams, is that it's not like the Braves have amazing momentum like what they were 2 years ago.
Yeah.
The Braves are also in free fall. The Mets and Braves are both sort of in some sort of race to the bottom, it seems like. The Mets and Braves are both 4-6 in their last 10 games. The Mets lost 2 out of 3 to the A's, who I would say are probably a below average team. You can't lose 2 out of 3 to the A's. The Braves just lost 6-0 to the Giants. Both of these teams look like they're in free fall right now. It wouldn't actually surprise me that much if the Giants, because I guess that's one thing that the Mets actually have going for them, which is that the Braves are in free fall. The Giants, though, I think they might catch up and end up beating out both teams. Right now, I would say I don't think the Mets deserve to make the playoffs right now based on the way that they've been playing. But that doesn't mean like they can't sneak in.
Yeah. No, in terms of the Mets, I have watched enough of them at least this year to kind of determine who they are and who they aren't. And I look at the overall rotation. I mean, you had Quintana pitch today. The Mets at a 5 spot. He gave us a grand slam. And that's tough. Severino, I think all in all has been decent. He's pretty much giving you kind of what you're getting paid for. Manai, I think for the most part, has been pretty decent. Kind of what you paid for. He's giving you about 5-6 innings max. And then you look at, I think really with the Mets currently right now, it's the mid part of the games after kind of the starters go out, leading up to a guy like Edwin Diaz. Can you get that Adam Ottavino trust? Probably not. I mean, he's been really up and down right now. I experienced that with the Red Sox many times with Ottavino. It was a roller coaster. It really was. I mean, you got Reed Garrett. Reed Garrett obviously pitched today. I think Reed Garrett could give you something. Brooks Riley was one of the southpaws that I did like, but I think he's been out for most of the year. So I think it's the bullpen that right now currently is the Mets' Achilles heel right now. And then it's Pete Alonso specifically, some guys specifically in that lineup that have just been very inconsistent. Brandon Nimmo, since the All-Star break, has not given much, and he's been batting in the 2-hole.
Nimmo's been terrible lately.
Yep. So that's something.
And he's still batting second in the order.
That's the thing.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think specifically there has to be some type of switch. I mean, I love Francisco Alvarez, but he's really, cooled off in the second half currently right now with the bat. So if you get some guys, kind of going, even JD's really kind of started to cool off. I mean, with the bat, he had a really good start when you guys got him coming back from injury, but he's really cooled off. And then Pete, obviously, Pete, for the most part, it's really been homer or strikeout. I mean, Pete says just had a really hard time putting the ball in play consistently. So, I think overall in all, the starting rotation, Nick, for the most part for the Mets has been decent. It's just the consistency of the offense and then the timeliness of some of these games. I mean, you look at the game like today, for instance, against the A's, where it was you needed to obviously have that series win, and then the Mets have the Marlins this weekend. The Marlins are not good at all. So I think that you at least take at least 2 of those games. This is the time of year. I mean, I'll talk about my Red Sox quick, but this is the time of year in terms of making the playoffs or not. It's very limited in terms of if there's a couple of games that you look back on when it comes to September play, right? I'm not saying every single game is must win when you're pretty much outside looking in the wild card mix, because like you were saying, the Braves haven't really been playing as well too. But to be fair with the Braves is Ronald Acuna's down, Ozzie Albies is down, Spencer Strider's been out for most of the year. So a lot of the main guys for the Braves are pretty much been out. So that's another thing too, is like, I feel like the Braves are, they're obviously not playing well too, but I feel like a lot of their main guys that either are been out or down, that's kind of one of the biggest reasons why with the Braves is about too. Now, you did mention about the Giants, and the Padres, another team too that have been playing decently also too.
But the Padres are way ahead of us. I'm not worried.
Yeah.
Like they're out of reach.
Yeah. So it's really comes down to right now each entire week. I think, I kind of look at it in terms of a checkpoint, right? Every single week is kind of a checkpoint, at least at this point in time in the season. I do start to kind of look at, at least from like my Red Sox. There's some teams like Kansas City Royals, some teams like right ahead of us that have been kind of going back and forth in terms of each week. But it doesn't really matter about the other teams unless you don't control your own destiny. That's the really biggest thing for me. So if you don't control your own destiny, the other stuff really doesn't matter. So you obviously have to control your destiny first, what the Mets could do, right? If they control their own destiny and kind of let it play out, then I think you guys do have a chance to make the playoffs. It just comes down to a bunch of certain situations. And then September comes around. I don't know about the rest of your overall schedule for August, but if September you got some meaningful baseball, it's a good thing because then you're kind of still within the mix. But if you're not playing meaningful baseball, then it's just like, well, it's like either preparing for the offseason or just starting to play some kids.
Right. Well, I would say a lot of people are blaming the bullpen, and they deserve a lot of blame, but a lot of times it's just the starting pitching.
That too. Yeah, no, the starters are
They gave up 4 runs in 4 innings. And Paul Blackburn the other day was also he was something. I think it was worse than that actually the other day. So a lot of times it's the starting pitching that also sucks. It's not always just about the bullpen. The pitching in general. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Some players in the lineup just not being consistent. But when you don't have good pitching, if your starting pitcher only lasts 4 innings and gives up 4 runs, especially when the Mets have a weak bullpen, but even if you don't have a weak bullpen,
right,
it's like you're not winning. You're not winning games that way. Like you can't win a playoff game like that.
No,
like it's not going to work. I don't think when all is said and done, the Mets are not going to make the playoffs. It's just not going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think it will. I've seen this before, and it's going to go bad. If anything, I would predict the Giants are going to make it. And right now, like if you want to say the Mets and Braves are both in free fall, which they both kind of are, the Braves are still 2 games ahead of the Jets, the Mets right now. So I still think that's. I mean, there's like even if we're both in all else being equal, the Braves are gonna make it over the Mets, and the Mets are, and we just have to hope for the Braves to have a worse free fall than the Mets right now, and the Giants are creeping right behind us. I just want to talk a little bit about the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
So the Olympics is over. We're not going to get, so we have to wait 4 years for the next Summer Olympics. Team USA won gold in basketball. Shocker.
Isn't that their 5th straight? Like their 5th straight gold for the men's, right?
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. men's basketball is just sort of supposed to win gold.
Yeah,
they're sort of supposed to. And the weird thing that ended was Noah Lyles apparently had COVID and was able to win bronze.
Yeah,
I'm surprised he tested himself.
I am too.
Do people still test for COVID?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm surprised. Let me rephrase it. I'm surprised he tested himself right before the race. Like, if he wasn't feeling great, you'd think that he would just not test himself until after, and then be like, "Oh, it turns out I had COVID."
I think at this point in terms of COVID, it's just like people were kind of like right beginning, like didn't know about it, and then like mid part of COVID, like people when they were starting to feel sick, they had like that anxiety, feel like, oh, like I really got to go test and stuff like that. But now it's almost like, I don't know if like people are at this point of like I don't want to say they don't care, but it's just like if you don't like have any type of thing, you're kind of feeling like like people just aren't testing like they maybe were, maybe about a couple years ago.
Yeah, no, like I said, I'm surprised. I'm kind of surprised that he tested himself right before the race, but he was able to win bronze with COVID, which is actually pretty impressive. And if he felt sick enough to test himself, then he had to have felt kind of sick. But I remember Josh Hart was saying on his podcast with Jalen Brunson, he was rooting against Noah Lyles, kind of.
A lot of people were.
Because, NBA fans and NBA players were. Because of what he said about the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
He said they aren't champions of the world, which is ridiculous. Of course, it comes from an Olympian because you're competing against other countries. Obviously, it was a stupid statement because in effect, you are the world champions because all of the best basketball players in the world play in the NBA. It's like, okay, fine. Like, could any foreign country can any foreign professional basketball league professional basketball team compete with NBA teams? Like, no. Obviously not. In effect,
but it's not going to go great, probably.
Like, it's the whole thing is just so stupid. One more story I want to get to just quickly. Monte Harrison, you do a baseball show. You know who that is, right?
Yeah, I've heard of him.
He was a baseball player. He's going back to college to play wide receiver at Arkansas.
That's interesting.
9 years old. He's going back to school.
I mean, good for him. I mean, some people.
He's like the Billy Madison of Arkansas.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're, some people graduate and they're just like, I want to do some more to my life. You only live once, as they always say. Heck, that's what he wants to do. He'll go back and play wide receiver at Arkansas.
Going
So
to be back on campus. I don't know if he went to college in the first before baseball, but he still has eligibility.
yeah.
So doesn't really matter how old you are. But I guess like a decade later is doing like a second stint in college.
I wonder, did they say if he's going to be walk on or is he actually like going to like?
No, I think I could be wrong. I think he's a scholarship player because if he was a walk on, we wouldn't know yet.
Yeah, that's true.
So he's probably a scholarship player. Honestly, I never even heard of him. So I don't know if he played football before base. I don't know if you know or not. If he played football before.
Yeah,
I don't know. It would be pretty fascinating if he makes it in the NFL. I don't know. I have my doubts about that.
That'd be really cool. Like that would be like a walk-on story. Like to really like tell people like you have a guy that played baseball like early on in their life, and then they come back and they go to school, and then they play at Arkansas, and then they kind of are like good, when they go back to school and they play and they actually get some playing time. And then like even if he wasn't like a star in the NFL, like just like your dream for like a lot of kids when they're younger, like kind of what they want to do when they grow up. Like if that ever happened for him, I'm like, I'd be happy for it because like people like they'd be like, who the hell is this guy? And then like people will say like, well, he had a little bit of an interesting story, like because like people that become athletes, like they have their own story. Some people go right to college, they get recruited, this and that. There's a couple of people though. I hate crossing sport like the Red Sox. There's a couple people that I know that are on the team currently right now that didn't go to college. They had certain situations where they were in different parts of their life, and then they found a way to play in pros for baseball, and that's that. So this could be maybe a certain situation where he goes back and maybe sees what he can do in college, and then from there, who knows?
Yeah. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. That's our show today. This was Moving the Goalpost. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart. You can follow Ben at Ben Kruse. What is it again?
Ben Kruse 144, all lowercase in terms of the name.
Just making sure. Okay. You can follow the show at MTGP on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. You can follow the Empty the Bench Network at ETB Network on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I'll be back next week.